All right, good morning. It is 12 o'clock. We had an appointment at 12 o'clock, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Everybody that's on the call right now, you are actually muted. And so if you could, you have a Zoom chat. If you would just go ahead and either unmute yourself and say hello or just type in that chat box. That way I know that you can hear me right now as we jump into today's discussion around the profit and loss. Okay, perfect. Okay, Adam, awesome. So he was the first one, and that's what we needed to know. He said he can hear me. And Jonathan, welcome, welcome. Okay, awesome. So what I'm going to do today, and I know that we've budgeted an hour for it. I am available for the entire hour, and yet I don't know that it will take us that complete hour. So I am going to review some items, and then I'll make sure that I stop and take questions. So again, if you have a question, unmute yourself, ask the question, or type it in the chat box. I went ahead and muted all the participants because sometimes if there's background noise, then other people can't hear, and it just becomes a big thing. So again, now, of course, all of you guys know who I am, Olivia Roberts, MAPS coach and Bold coach. And today's topic, we're actually going to be looking at the profit and loss statement and how do we utilize that in our business to actually keep more money. So even though we're looking at this top screen that says the MREA budget model, we know that your budget model is about understanding what happens to your money between the time you receive it, right, as gross revenue, and when you keep it as net income. So that actually says MREA page 152. Two page numbers that I'd like you to write down and become really familiarized in the MREA, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, page 193 and page 157. A lot of the items that we're going to cover today is page 193 and page 157 of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent model. Again, as we go through, I'll probably will answer all of your questions, maybe even before you ask them, and yet please keep in mind that just jot down the question, that way we open up for question and answers, or type it in that chat box. Okay, all right, and then we've got Terry with us as well. All right, welcome, Terry. All right, so let's get started. With our profit and loss, you want to know that there are 5 things that we want to be aware of, right? Our income, our cost of sale. Another way that you'll hear this is cost of goods sale. Expenses, net profit, below the line. Now, obviously, we all know what income, right? That's the money that we get that actually comes into the business. And yet sometimes we're not doing our P&L the best way, because what we typically do is we do our P&L based on once we receive the money. The income is actually going to take in consideration the commission check prior to any concessions, prior to any splits, prior to anything that would go, the cap, all of that. And then we said cost of sale or cost of goods sale. Now, a lot of times there's a question about the cost of goods sale. So how do we look at it and say, how do we know what's the difference between a cost of sale and a cost of and an expense? So a cost of sale is the easiest way to think about the cost of sale. If you would not have paid it if you didn't have a closing, that's a cost of sale. So for instance, you don't have a team split if there's no sale. You would not have given up, maybe you made a concession because right before the end there became a big hoopla about the refrigerator, so you bought them a refrigerator. That would be a concession. You wouldn't have done that unless there was a sale. So unless there's a sale, that's how we know if it's an expense or a cost of sale. Now, Adam, you asked a great question, even team split. So yes, even team split. So we're going to actually look at an example of a profit and loss sale, and that'll help us break that down. Because even with team splits, let's say that, I don't know, for easy math, Let's say that was a $300,000 closing, 3% commission, so that's a $9,000 commission. All of that $9,000 is going to show up before any of the splits. So you're going to show that there's a, you'll report, even if you're the buyer's agent, you would report 50-50 at $9,000. Now later, you're going to take out how much went to the agent. That way, because it was incoming and it also went out. And the reason why that's so important is without that, all of that income, which is all of the GCI before concessions, before royalty, before anything by the team, this is the only way we'll see if we are actually within balance of the cost of sale that we want to stay below the 29.2%. So that may be easier if we look at an example profit and loss. And we're going to do that in just a second. The other thing, and yet I know, Adam, that was a question you asked. So Adam, if I don't explain that thoroughly enough for you, or if that was somebody else's question as well, as we move forward and we talk about that, just again, type another question or let me know and we will make sure that we address that. Now, some of these, like below the line, how do we know if we're going to put something below the line, or what does that even mean? So you share your profit and loss with your accountant, right? Because your accountant's typically the one that's creating this for you. And there are amazing companies out there that's all they do is they operate off the MREA model, and they do this for agents. Things below the line would be things that you can write off, and yet it does not, you don't actually have to do that to run your business. An example of this would be, while it's great to give to KW Cares and other nonprofits, it is not a requirement of your business, right? You could be in business and not have to pay that. So let's say that you live in Northern California and your tax accountant said, you know what, we can write off the cost of Botox. Okay, that's between you and your accountant, and yet that would be below the line because it's not necessarily that you have to have that in order to operate your business. So that's a little bit about what's below the line. So let's look at, I'm going to have you guys write this down or take a screenshot of this, the 9 expense categories and percentages for the budget model. Now this is actually on page 193 of the MREA manual. Go ahead and so we want to make sure that our salaries are under 12%, or again, if we're making a deviation, it's because we have made a conscious decision to do so based on great facts, right? Not even realizing we're doing that. Lead generation, 9.2%. Occupancy, that's your rental space in your market center. That's 2%. Technology, 1.5%, and phone is going to be 1%. Now, Ken asked the question, this is MREA 1, correct? That is correct. One of the things that they are advising us until we actually come out with MREA 2, that we're just going to focus on the MREA 1 model. And that's, so this is the MREA. Now, so thank you for that question, Ken. And then Adam, your question is salaries at 12%, including if we pay ourselves a salary from the business. Yes, and until you're somewhere, it's great to pay yourself a salary, and yet you don't have to do it in order to run the business. So a good rule of thumb would be to keep that below the line until you're somewhere about that, moving into or close to that 5th level. And the reason we're saying closer to that 5th level is because let's say that you pay yourself a salary and you have a 25% profit in your business. You get ready to hire someone else, and so they now get they're now getting your salary, and you only are getting the profit from the business. So we want to keep that the salary below the line until we're getting, like you said, going toward about that 5th level when we're going to start replacing ourselves in that role. So before we replace our salary, we would want to go ahead and move our salary up below the line. That way we could say, you know what, I'm only at a 9% profit. If my salary went away, wow, that's not enough for me to hire anybody yet. So now let's ramp that up and let's grow it till I have a 25% profit, and then I'll be ready to hire somebody. So that's the difference between the salary. So Adam, did I answer your question around salaries and where to put them on the profit and loss right now? Okay, perfect. Okay, now if we look at, now this is an actual example of the P&L. And so we're just going to start right here on the left. And this is very much an example. And yet if you look, so you'll notice all these numbers are rounded off. So I don't want, not necessarily looking at these numbers. What we are looking at is, do we have the groupings according to this? Okay, there's one other question that we had around teams. If you're the only agent, don't pay yourself as a listing agent or a buyer's agent. For now, no. Now, as you start moving into those roles, if I'm understanding your question, Ken, so the question is, if you're the only agent, don't you pay yourself as a listing agent and buyer's agent? You would just be receiving, the commission from the, from the sale. Now, would it be great to start looking into that, depending on where you are on the levels? Because again, the cool part, if you're doing that, whenever you bring in your buyer's agent to replace you, you actually know how much of your income that they're going to now receive, right? So let's say that you were paying yourself, 50-50, 50% went to the business, 50% as the buyer's agent. That would actually be really a great idea, because now you are getting ready to bring in a buyer's agent, and you can literally go, okay, well, as the buyer agent last year on my team, made 50 grand, or whatever that number is, right? Maybe that's 250,000 or 100,000. So you could have a legit, when you're talking value proposition of someone to come on your team, in addition to, now know that's not going into your pocket. So that could be something that you could do, Ken, absolutely. Okay, so now if we, and I'm sorry, Ken, did that answer your question, or did you want anything? Do we need to go any deeper on that particular one? Okay, perfect. And again, it really goes back to, if you started doing that right before, a little bit before you hired that person, it would be great. All right, so now if we look at this, this is the profit and loss. What we went ahead and done on the right-hand side of all of this is to put the percent of income so that we know where we are with that. So this was, so again, if you have an MREA bookkeeper and they're creating this, how cool is it for you to be able to look at it at a glance and say, okay, this is where I'm at, I'm at this percentage all the way through. Now, so if we start right here and we look at, right, the income, right? All the GCI before the cap, referral splits, anything like that. So you've got your listing sold income, your referral income, sales income, total income. For this, we're going to say 87.5, right? Now you've got your agent income. So let's say you have a buyer agent, and it was 13,000 of commission to them, and the total commission income 105. Now we've got, did we have any interest earned on our money, any non-commission income? I don't know that we'll have a lot of non-commission income, and yet I'm just throwing that in there because sometimes that could potentially happen, and now we've got that in there. So you've got your total operating income right here at 101,000. Now we're going to look at our cost of goods sold, so AKA that cost of sale. So now we've got, so for instance, this particular, if you're at a market center that once you cap, you pay a transaction fee. Well, that's what this would be looking at. Any fees like that. If you took that concession we talked about, maybe you had to buy, you bought a refrigerator to make the deal work, or a home warranty or something like that, then you would go ahead and notate that was a commission reduction. Then you're looking at, so all of your agent expenses. Now, this particular person, we're at 29.7% when we look at the agent expenses. Again, this is really, really a sample. So it's more about just kind of getting the feel of what it looks like with the expenses and then those percentage of income. So here we're saying they've got a gross profit of 69.5. So after their expenses, now so that 5,200 where it says agent expenses of 30, that's supposed to say 30,000, not 300,000, by the way. Where that comes in is that was the sales in. Sorry, that was okay. So I told you. Remember, this is very much a rough draft or an example of this. When you bring out the agent expense, remember I told you that you're going to put how much the agent made in right here. This is where you would take out how much the agent made, how much the agent was paid. Okay? So somebody gives me a thumbs up if that makes sense. So I know that the number here is not accurate. I just caught that. And yet that agent income, and then if they would have, right, again, so if we look at that example of the 9,000 commission, and then the agent, so you would take the whole 9,000 commission reported as a team, and then you would pay out 4,500 goes to that agent. So that's what that agent expense is, okay? And that's why that's cost of goods sales. And then Ken, the question is from that was, isn't the buyer agent a cost to sell? Absolutely. And yet, so this is where the income came in, and then that agent commission, the agent expense, this is where it goes out as a cost of sale. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so thank you, Ken, for that. But yeah, so that's where it comes out as the cost of sale. Apologize, I went to the next page. We're going to stay right here for a second. Okay, now we're looking at, so we've got the total cost of sales, our gross profit. Now we want to start looking at our expenses. Now, when we look at our expenses, if we go back to the 9 expense categories, apparently I stopped before I finished typing all of those out. So if you have your MREA book handy, turn to page 193. And I'm just going to give these to you real quick, because again, I apologize, I did not finish this out. So it's salaries at, so we've got salaries, lead generation, occupancy, technology, phone here. Then it's going to be supplies at 1%, education at 1%, equipment at 1%, and auto/insurance at 0.5%. And that would give us a total expense of 29.2%. Okay, so the ones missing right after phone is supplies 1%, education 1%, equipment 1%, auto insurance 5%. Okay, I can actually do it right here. So this is what is missing, and then okay, then take a screenshot of this. Sorry, guys. Okay, so we're going to go right back. Well, 1 second. Okay. Sorry, let me see if I can't make this go away. Okay, perfect. Okay. Okay. So now we're back over here. So we've got the first one at expense. And if we look at this, we've got our, so obviously, so salaries. Executive assistant, transaction coordinator. Now, this could be, when you look at the expenses, transaction coordinator, if you're paying them, it goes back, it could be a cost of sale. Because if you're paying them only if it closes, then it could be a cost of sale. It would also be something that you could go ahead and keep under salaries, and only because eventually you're going to grow large enough that you want that person in-house. So again, that would give you an idea of how much you're spending every month and how much that person's salary would be costing you. So those, you could see that in cost of sale or in the salary. And then of course you have contract labor. And for now, let's forget photographer, think courier, because photographer is going to go in a little bit later. Think courier. So if you had somebody that was a courier for your office, excuse me. All right. Any employee bonuses are going to go right here. And then if you look over on your right, you'll have payroll expenses. If you're paying for the health, if you're paying for any health insurance for your employees, there's payroll processing fees, anything like that, staff incentives, team building, that would go right here. And so then you'd have your total for your salaries. Now we would go straight into lead generation. Now, lead generation, any type of advertising, right, that's going to go under lead generation, the designing for that advertisement, print, direct mail, broker open house, business promotion, of course, all internet advertising will go under here. Now, the interesting thing, meals and entertainment. Now, this would be you're out showing property and you take a client and you stop and y'all go eat. This would be where meals and entertainment would go in that scenario, because you're taking them to lunch to further that conversation, to further that so that they will buy a house, right? So that's why meals and entertainment go here. The same with photography, because typically with photography, well, even if we have, let's say we have a listing, because we only do it if, let's say we only take pictures of houses if we have a listing, and yet whether or not that listing sells or not, we're still going to be out the expense of photography. So that's why we don't put that one under a cost of sale. And then maybe you have some pre-listing expenses, signs, all of that, that goes under that lead generation. Of course, and then social media. Then you move into occupancy. Occupancy, they're just talking about your office rent. So like if you had a mega agent office, it's going to be above the suggested percent a lot of times. If you're officing within a Keller Williams, that should be easily be underneath the percentage for occupancy. So now if we look at technology. Now, sometimes technology can be a little bit of a challenge. Do I put it in technology or do I put it in lead generation? So some of these very much make sense. So like GoDaddy, technology, right? That's where you would buy web addresses and things like that. What may not be so clear is, what about your CRM? Would that go under technology, or would that go under equipment, or I'm sorry, lead generation? Will that go under technology or lead generation? So the question to ask yourself is, how are you using that? So are you using it more as a glorified Rolodex? That would be technology. If you're using it to actually lead generate, you're sending things out with that, you know, that would be more of that lead generation. So if you're attracting business, or if it's like a glorified Rolodex, that's gonna help you decide if that's technology or lead generation. Any specific questions around things that maybe you look at, you know, is this lead generation or is this technology? Okay, so we don't have any questions that though, then we're just going to keep going on. Now, cell phone. Now, again, let's say that you have your entire family on your cell phone plan. Well, your accountant may say, okay, this is fine for you to write this off. And if that's between you and him, what we want to do is, let's say that it was you and you had your entire family on that. We only really want to put on our profit and loss what we had to run the business. So it would be, you know, what portion of that cell phone bill goes for the business. And so that's going to give us our phone, and then we look at supplies. Now, something that's pretty interesting about supplies, if you look at that, we're talking banking and credit card fees, bank service charges. If you're working with an MRA bookkeeper, typically they're going to put their expense in cost and supplies as well. And it's a little bit of an interesting concept if you think about it. You know, where else would it go? And that's where one of the ways, if you're not sure about where something goes, you're going to kind of shoehorn it in place. So, for instance, you know, if you look at it and you go, well, where would I put, you know, my accountant? Well, you could just go through the 9 expenses and go, well, it's definitely not auto or insurance. They're definitely not an equipment. You know, all the things that it's not. And then it just makes sense the only place that it can go. And part of it, you know, they're supplying the P&L for you, things like that. So that would be how we kind of shoehorn to where they go within the model. Now that takes us over here to supplies. Then you're looking at your education dues, coaching, and consulting. So, and you'll see with coaching consulting, this particular example, right, they're at 2%. And if you look at where we need to be for education dues, we really, you know, 3.4% is, I'm sorry, it's 1%. So you can tell that we're a little bit out of whack here. The updated one, we're going to go up probably 1 and 1.5% because you have to remember that whenever the MREA was written, there wasn't coaching, right? Or not a whole lot, and there definitely wasn't MAPS coaching at the time. So that they are going to make some edits there. The other thing that if you'll look at, so like seminars and class. So I just chose $800 here because let's say you're taking Bold, which would actually be $799, and yet you're taking Bold, well, that would be a cost. If you were taking Bold and maybe you're driving 3 hours to get there, that would be what you would write off for travel. This would also be what you would write off for, like, you know, you're going to family reunion and the travel to and from family reunion. You would write this off under those education and dues. Any questions so far? All right. And then let's just move right into auto and then auto insurance. So that's auto expenses like car wash detailing, parking. This would be where your E&O insurance, errors and omission insurance would go. Some of us, you know, may pay that once a year. Some of us may pay it monthly. So if you paid it once a year, you might have a spike 1 month and the rest of the month would be low. Total insurance expenses. So then we go here, it gives us our net ordinary income, and that lets us know what percentage of our business we're actually profiting. Okay, so I'll real quick, if you could type in maybe or unmute yourself. What's an aha? What's a question now that you're actually, you know, looking at the profit and loss? What is it that you'd like me to cover that I haven't covered?
Olivia, it's Tammy. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfect, Tammy.
Awesome. This has been really, really helpful. I think most of my questions are going to be from my accountant on percentages of tax write-off, you know, and he may give me specific guidelines, but I'm going to take this to him this week and see where, you know, he will really be answering my questions. This has been hugely helpful. You know, I've struggled with this.
Okay, well, awesome, yeah. And a lot of it, because remember, a lot of times and I love that you brought that up, Tammy, because a lot of times we think of our P&Ls and we are looking to write things off. Absolutely, we want to write off everything, right, that we can, and yet that would be below the line.
Right.
Yeah, that way we can tell what did it cost for us to run our business, because we never send these P&Ls to the IRS. They don't want this, right? This is how, you know, is your business profitable? Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that, and I'm glad that it was helpful. Yeah, thank you for that. Is there anything else that you wanted to look at or had questions about?
Not yet. I think I'll have more questions for him because he may direct me to put some things different lines. Because quite frankly, I want to take this P&L and that this is what I also want to work off. I want to be able to turn it in him every month or quarter, and then they check it and put it together for me and hand it back to me. So I will have some deep questions for them.
Okay, perfect.
You know me, I want
and
and I want it all to be on one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I will say this to you and to everybody on this call. I'm not an accountant. I'm so far away from that. Like, you're going to, ultimately, you're going to want to take it to your accountant. You're going to want to, what they advise. We do, because worst case scenario, if they say, no, we want it on the profit and loss, it would just be an extra step for us, but we would just, we could deduct it and then re-add it. It's a little bit extra, and yet they're going to know what you need to do as far as write-offs and that type of thing.
Right, yeah. Right. And okay. I'm going to print this off, what you've done today. I'd love to be able to print it off and take it with me as well. In PowerPoint.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, we recorded this, so I would be glad to email you a recording and email you these pages. Now, and I do know that we've got the categories and things are correct. I did the numbers were completely made up. So, so the numbers are completely made up. So they're not. Yeah. So I just wanted you to be able to have that visual of it.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. No, my pleasure.
Livia, this is Ken. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Perfect, Ken.
Okay. So what I like about this is, made up or not, you do have a lot of kind of details of things that we might all be doing, whatever, the Facebook, the Zillow, and all that kind of stuff. I did join a few minutes late, so I don't know if you said this, but of course, at the back of the MREA book, there's a whole chart of accounts. And I put it out on Keller Inc., or you can certainly Google it, but there are places where you can download the chart of accounts, even Excel. So people could find that helpful.
Yeah, and Ken, thank you. I did not mention that, and I'm glad you did. I know with some of my clients, I've emailed that, but yeah, you can go to Keller Inc. and download that chart of accounts. So whether you're doing it yourself or you're having someone do it for you, that is very helpful for that chart of accounts. Thank you for bringing that up, Ken.
I have a question, Olivia. This is Terry.
Hey, Terry. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. When you're giving percentage of income, I assume the denominator is the GCI, not because when I've been doing my P&L, I did it just on my income, but I didn't realize the denominator should be the GCI of the entire team. So when you're saying, it should be a certain percentage, you're talking about of the GCI.
Yeah, it's the total income. So yes, for the whole
Okay.
team, any income.
So you, at the beginning, to clarify, you said that the cost of sales should be less than 29.2% of GCI.
Yes.
Okay. So this previous discussion about split to pay team buyer agents, obviously, if you're paying more than 29%, you're out of, you're beyond what you should be.
Yeah, and like a lot of times this actually, yeah, because like if you're paying them higher than a 40-50% split, you're going to, yes, you're going to get out of whack here. And the same situation with like, and I know this isn't for you, Terry, but for some of us, like a lot of teams, they'll hire buyer's agents and then they'll start hiring, listing agents. Well, the same situation, listing agents typically are more of a salaried position because, you've got holding costs, you've got marketing expenses, things like that. So again, that would all come out in that, or that would show it that you're not going to be under that 29.2% because it's going to cut into your profit. So yeah, with the higher split, it's cutting into the profit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, my pleasure. Well, and something because, so, Terry, with you being from New York, something that sometimes, because this is the other thing, like under the salary or administrative, and even, oh, yeah, we have a couple minutes. So I'll pull up it almost runs hand in hand because if you look at the updated, what right now looks like it's going to be the most updated that's going to come out in the new MREA model of the team structures, like level 1, level 2, level 3. Sometimes we may be off model a bit. So for instance, there's a team in New York that has a concierge. Like that's their whole job is the concierge part of it. Well, obviously, right, that's not going to be something that in other parts of the country we would have that. So that would be a little bit of adjustment in the model. And yet, as long as you keep your expenses, as long as you go back to the P&Ls and you're looking at your expenses and that's not pushing you outside of that, that would very much still be a fit for the team.
So
I don't know
what
if that
percentage would you say is appropriate for the net income of the team leader to compare to overall, expenses? Profit. This is like bottom line profit.
Okay,
what
profit,
percentage would you say is healthy?
So as healthy, I don't know that because it depends on where you are in your business, but you probably want at least 25% profit. Now, if you're not already paying yourself a salary. Now, if you're paying yourself a salary and then you had 25% profit, you're going to be closer to that 50% mark. 50%. Somewhere around that 50% is what you want to look at, because if you look at 29.2%, 29.2% cost of sales and cost of expenses, that's 60%. Let's round it up to 30 and 30. So you'd want to be at a 40% profit.
Okay.
Okay. Now, Ken, I'm going to ask you the same question because I know you've been studying the P&Ls a whole lot, and this is kind of your background, and you've even started learning about the new updated model. Would you say anything else right there as far as the profit? Is there anything else you would add there?
Can I clarify something until he answers?
Yep,
Olivia?
absolutely.
So do you think that it's good for teams like mine to separate my own sales from the team sales? Because the percentages you're giving are, if you're running a team where you're not selling yourself, but in my team, I'm a big share of the profit of the sales. So somehow it seems like maybe I should run the P&L and take myself out of it on the sales side.
Well, no, so
because my numbers are being skewed by me carrying a big percentage of the team sales.
No, if you go back to what I'm looking at right here on that first page, and we look at the income, that listing sold income. So in essence, for your team, that would be you. Then you'd have a referral income, a sales income. This is all you. Then you have your, buyer agent number one. What was their income?
Mm-hmm.
And then you would take out how much, take out what they got actually paid. So this would be the full GCI, and then how much you paid them. And that would be that agent expense that you're paying out. Okay. And that may be because you, if you like, that might be more of a continued conversation between you and I. But yeah, that would be you, and then each agent. So you might have, you'd have 3 agents here, their total, and then down here under cost of sales, you would take out what they got paid.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Let me see if there was any. I'd made some notes of things that I wanted to make sure that we covered. I think we've covered it all. Oh, real quick, sometimes how do we know if it's a supply, or if it's or if it's a supply or if it's technology? One good rule of thing, if you can plug it in, right? It's it's electronic. If you can put it in the desk, you can't plug it in. That would be a supply. So that's one way that you could look at. Is it equipment or supplies? Let's see. Okay, I think. Okay, no, so that's everything that I wanted to cover on today's call. Now, let me make sure that there wasn't any additional questions from you guys. So, okay, so Kevin, you asked the question, is market center contribution covered anywhere? Could you tell me, what do you mean by market center contribution? What specifically are you talking about? He may be attempting to unmute. I don't know. Okay, so Kevin, if you, prior to cap. Is market center contribution covered anywhere prior to cap? I'm still not sure if I'm understanding your question. I'm going to answer what I think you might be asking. So I think what you're asking is okay, we have a commission check. We go to the lawyer cuts it to us. We take it. That's what you're going to put in your profit and loss as income. Now, then you have a cap, right? So then that's going to come out. So that cap would come out under in 51. So in this example, I have over cap transaction fee because this particular agent was capped. In this example, let's say you're not capped, then you would put, this would be how much you paid towards your cap here. Because that's what you paid out. So I think in this area 51, I think that answers the question that you're asking me. So we'd go under cost of goods sold. Give me a thumbs up or a yes or another question. While Kevin's responding to that, guys, is there anything else you guys want to add, say, question before we wrap up today's call? I do really want to make sure that you've got, your questions answered. Okay, perfect. So yes, Kevin, awesome. He's good. Okay. Is there anything else anybody wants to cover, ask questions about before we say it's a wrap? Okay, you guys are easy. All right, well then we're going to just go ahead and call it there. We'll end this. This is being recorded, so I will send you guys a recording of this in addition to the example of profit and loss here. Have an amazing Monday. This is our last week of individual coaching calls. And then so make sure that you have looked at the calls that are going to be available for the last 2 weeks, those group coaching calls. Those are going to be amazing ones to plug into. So go look at the ones that are going to make the biggest difference for us for next year. And if you would, I'd love to know which ones that you are going to be on. With that said, have an amazing rest of your Monday, and we'll be talking this week.
Thank you, Olivia.
Thank you. My pleasure.